Welcome to our Red Hat Government Symposium Executive Insight Series. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here with Frank Romano, Senior Solutions Engineer at Cloudera. Frank, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Well, let me set the stage here a little. Where have you seen examples of how the federal government has really looked to data to fuel digital transformation?
Well, I think the government has done, many of the government agencies have done an excellent job over the years of leveraging their data because they've realized that mining that data is so important to the mission, either just achieving the overall mission objectives, or today I think is more of a focus on increasing mission efficiencies, whether it be doing things on the mission faster and better, or bringing the cost down on achieving that same mission. So the government has really looked to mining that data appropriately and leveraging maybe new data sets that weren't available to them in the future, and coupling them with some existing data sources to really deliver to their mission capabilities that maybe even just a few years ago they couldn't do. And that's really become game changing for a lot of agencies like CMS and their ability to detect fraud, and IRS, their ability to spot trends within the community. And now they're using new data sources to go after real-time analytics, which is really interesting for the government because that's a space that they haven't really delved into too much in the not so distant past.
Well, next, let me dive a little deeper. How has open source technology played an important role as the federal government has faced critical challenges such as the COVID-19 response?
Open source has been critical, and I'll tell you why. I came out of the National Security Agency, and one of the things we learned very quickly is new data sources were coming available to help us find the bad guy, but our old purpose-built systems that were centered around mining one particular data set weren't able to deal with all these new data sources that were available to us. So it became a very manual method in order to try to connect those dots. Open source allowed us, it just opened our eyes to new tech that would allow us to bring in all these dissimilar and disparate data sources, whether they be structured with the unstructured. And we were able to connect dots before in minutes where it would take weeks of human intervention. And so that has really been game changing for government agencies by leveraging this open source tech that moves so quickly. The innovation is evolving, in months and weeks. Whereas in the old days, government systems would get built, they'd get deployed, and in a lot of ways they didn't change over the course of their 4 or 5 year contract period. Open source totally changed that. It gave government agencies the ability to add in new feature functionalities, go after new objectives at will, literally at will, as soon as the tech became available. And again, hugely game changing. And I'll give one quick example. CDC had a platform that they put together utilizing open source technology from Red Hat and Cloudera to go after flu vaccines to determine what was the right flu vaccine for each given year. When COVID popped, they were very easily able to pivot and apply that data platform to new COVID data sets to help with their COVID investigation. So agility, open source technology has given government agencies agility that was never before seen.
Those are great illustrations. Thank you. Let me shift gears just a little. How does open source also enable better cybersecurity for agencies?
Well, I'll tell you, cybersecurity is one of the most challenging use cases that an agency can go after. The data sets are changing so quickly. The volume of data is massive. And then the risk of not achieving mission objectives can be very far long felt. And so open source has really that agility and that flexibility and extensibility of leveraging the open source community and the innovation that happens so quickly has really allowed government agencies, cybersecurity platforms to keep up with the new threat vectors that seemingly come almost on a weekly, daily basis. There's a new vector, but thankfully there are new libraries available in the open source. There's new tools that are available that we can put to bear on these new threat vectors and, go after that cybersecurity use case and really protect the agency assets.
And then lastly, Frank, what trends or technologies should federal agencies be paying attention to now and in the upcoming year in light of that?
Well, there's always good to be aware. I always caution agencies not to chase the shiny new object, the new toy that comes up. But I think agencies have to be looking at hybrid architectures. There was a time where all of our government agencies, we did everything on-prem. And then recently there's been a lot of that, let's go cloud first, let's do lift and shift and move our workloads up into the cloud. And a lot of agencies have realized the cloud's not good for everything. It may be too expensive for some workloads. It may be too not robust enough from an on-time performance. So hybrid architecture is really that architecture that agencies should utilize in order to still make use of those on-prem assets that they have, but leverage the cloud where it makes sense. So that's one. Multi-cloud, I think, is a trend that I think government customers ought to look to, because the last thing I tell my customers, don't put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. So, AWS is great, but if you leverage AWS and Azure at the same time, not only will you probably be more apt to get the best pricing on the infrastructure, but if something happens in an AWS region that you've selected, it goes down, well, your Azure picks up. And, so I think multi-cloud is very, very important going forward. I think deploying and developing machine learning models, and so that you can go after predictive analytics, I think that's going to be really game changing in the future for a lot of government agencies. This is a space that is new for many agencies. And I think the agencies like IRS and Census and a bunch of others that have really gone down this path, the gains have been huge for them. And then the last thing I'd say is GPUs are really coming on strong and showing agencies how they can leverage them to do legacy workloads that may have taken hours, maybe even days to accomplish that workload. Now they can run it in seconds or minutes. So instead of having to wait and run something over the weekend, they can run it during the normal course of a business day. And so that's huge. So there's so many things out there, but those are the ones I think, you can't boil the ocean, so to speak. And so those are ones I'd really advise customers to focus on over the next 12, 18 months.
Absolutely. Well, Frank Romano, thank you so much for taking some time with us here, sharing your insights and some of your examples of the way we're just seeing the federal government and government at large continue to benefit from things like open source and other solutions.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Wyatt, for the time.